Hey, it's Steve from Sparky's Garage. We're back on the 5-liter Mustang. I took it down to Walmart, got some tires put on it. They did an oil change, and then Jacob, the service manager, I believe, he offered to do the headlight restoration on this thing, and it came out amazing. So special thank you to him. But hey, when we were coming home, the car started falling on its face, started stalling out. I don't have a good video clip of it, only off my cell phone. So yeah, here's the video and check it out. Running smooth, and then all of a sudden it will die. Oh. Now that you saw that video, couple things I did real quick just to diagnose it. I went ahead and I popped off the EGR valve, cleaned it, inspected it, works fine. Did a vacuum test on it. It diaphragm closes up and opens. Another thing I did is I popped off the idle control solenoid, the IAC here, and cleaned it out, changed the gasket. That didn't do nothing. Still does it. The one thing I did not do, and I think this may be the problem, is I did not do O2 sensors. And the reason I say I think this is the problem is when it's bone cold, it runs on an open loop, which means it runs off a tune just to get it warmed up. Once it's warmed up, it goes to what's called closed loop, which runs off the O2 sensors. The O2 sensor is tattletale to the motor, but it's running too rich or too lean. So as soon as the motor gets up to operating temperature, 180, 200, it does that thing it does in the video. Starts running really rough, and then it stalls out. So since it goes from open loop to closed loop, I'm thinking it might be the O2 sensors. I've never done them. The maintenance on this car was very poorly done. So I'm gonna go ahead and change those out. I'm gonna get the car jacked up real quick, put some Jacksons underneath it, and we'll pop off those O2 sensors. And get yourself one of these handy tools. They're pretty cheap, they're only like $9, but it's an O2 sensor socket. Makes life easy changing those old ones out, putting on the new ones. So let's get underneath it and check it out. So here's the cat. You can see there's the O2 sensor right there, and then on this side, where is it at? Here's the cat. And then there's the O2 sensor. These are both upstream, so they're all the way up towards the collector. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my socket on that and get it out. There's a little button right here you gotta push and then pull down, and then it'll come unplugged. And here's the little button right there. Then I'll go ahead and just plug it back together. Every time I work on this car, I keep finding more and more of these things. There's more dirt dabblers. They're just made a nest everywhere in this car. Every time I work on it, I keep finding those things. Okay, I got both O2 sensors off. Look at the driver's side. It's got a lot of black soot on it. The passenger side has less. So maybe this is our culprit. It's maybe dead. I don't know. Again, this car was running super rough when I got it, and since then I've done the spark plugs. Obviously you saw that. Plugs, wires. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and put on the new one on the passenger side. Alright, put the battery back on. She's on. I'm just going to tighten it down. Alright, battery's tight. I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. It will probably run pretty darn good because it's cold right now. But again, we'll see what happens when it gets to the 180, 200 range. That's when I start having the issues. Hood's closed. I'm gonna jump in it and take it for a spin. Kind of warm it up faster than just sitting here. Okay, check engine light is on and it's doing it again. It wants to fall on its face and die. Alright, let's go back to the house before I get stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. Not happy. What the deal is. Only when it warms up. All right, you can see after the O2 sensors, the Mustang won that war. Feeling pretty defeated, but I didn't do this on camera, but I grabbed a volt gauge and took this volt gauge right here. I put one on the ground and I checked the TPS. This is the TPS sensor that sits right at the top of here, and I basically put a pin through the green wire right here and then put my red lead on the volt gauge, and you want this to be at 1 volt or just under 1 volts at idle, not at idle, excuse me, with just the key on. Do not start it. And I checked it, it was okay, but then I just basically tapped on top of this. When I just barely tapped on it with a screwdriver, it started going haywire. It went to 5 volts, 4 volts, 3, 2. I mean, it was going all over the map. So this thing is bad because I just put a new TPS on it and it fires off and runs perfect. So after all that, it was just a TPS sensor. And it was weird too. It only did it when it was warm. I'm still baffled by it, but anyways, it's fixed now. So next thing we're going to tackle right now is we're going to get rid of the aftermarket gauges. They have a water temp gauge right here and then a mechanical oil gauge that goes into the car. It goes on the put it up here. It goes on that pillar right here, the A pillar. The oil gauge actually is starting to leak in the interior, so that's the reason why I want to get rid of it. Had to order the oil pressure gauge, but they did have a water temp gauge, the factory one, and all the factory wiring is still there. So we got a Master Pro part number 2-8331. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this aftermarket sending unit, put in the factory one, and put the factory little what's it called, terminal on, and it should work off the gauge now like factory. So let's get that removed. Okay, here is the old mechanical temperature gauge that went on that pod. I went ahead and removed it, and I put on, where is it at? Right there. I put on the stock factory sending unit, and the stock wire is right there still. So now it's hooked up to the gauge just like factory. We're gonna get the old mechanical oil line off and do the same thing and put it back on the dash. So yeah, I went a little crazy. I removed this mechanical oil pressure fitting, and I put the factory one back on right here. Factory wire was still there, and what I mean by I went crazy, I got mad and just ripped this whole thing off the A-pillar. So no more gauges. Freaking garbage. And look how scary this is. This stuff is like brittle. I mean, I just barely bend it and it just flakes away. That was ready to cause a fire or something. So anyways, now we're gonna see, make sure all the gauges work. Okay. Yes, check that out. The factory oil pressure gauge. I never worked before. And then this is the temp one. It's part of the get up the temp. This is just a wire. I gotta figure out why this wire is sticking out right here. It's kind of annoying. But this is the temperature gauge, so I'll get some heat in there and hopefully it works. This is the A-pillar that I took that pot off of. I got some glue I gotta remove, and then the only bad part is they cut it right there to allow all the wires to come in. So I'm gonna need to find a new A-pillar if I want to make it perfect, but way better than having that ugly pod on there. Oh look, temperature gauge is going up slowly. It's definitely off the 130 now, but I am pumped for that right there. Oil gauge is working. Now when I was on the actual pod gauge thing, it read 65 psi at idle. So yeah, runs like a charm. Well, I hope you guys enjoy this video. It was crazy trying to chase the problem with the motor. Got the motor running good. Got it all back on the factory gauges on the dash instead of that aftermarket pod. It's just a huge improvement with this car. So I hope you enjoy the video. Make sure you like it, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.